Welcome to the What's Next podcast. On today's episode, Mike and I sit down with Logan Barrett. We open the conversation on Operation Orphan and the work they have been doing in the Ukraine and other journeys around the globe. So if you're ready, buckle up and let's go. Welcome to the What's Next podcast, sponsored by Frontline Forward. Pretty special place, a wellness center that's dedicated to the health and well-being of our first responders, our paramedics, firefighters, nurses, coppers that are out there, our military personnel, just everybody that's working the front line. So I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Mike Cactus.
How are you, Brian? Good to see you today.
If I was any better, I'd be you.
No. The world couldn't handle two.
No.
One's enough.
No, absolutely.
Hey, glad you guys are here. As we said, Brian and I started this podcast because we truly believe everybody has a story, and our stories connect us in so many ways. They either break down barriers or, take us out of that silence and give us a place to speak and to find comfort in a community. And that's what we're here to do. And today we're bringing many people on that we've met. And today we're bringing on somebody that we just recently met through our good friend, Steve and Ryan, and Logan Barrett. Logan,
how are you?
Thanks for joining us today, man. We've spent probably the last, almost hour just chatting. We could have been taping this whole last hour conversation because Mr. in his casual check shirt and hat, this guy's unbelievable, man. He keeps saying, no, I'm just a regular guy.
What are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
Holy Hannah.
So Logan, just fill us in a bit. I mean, we talk about our stories and how they connect us, and the whole thing about what's next is here's where I was, here's where I'm going, but I'm still not sure where I'm supposed to go. So what's next? But tell us, let's start back at high school.
Yeah, so I grew up in Paris, Ontario, and
we won't hold that.
Yeah, I know. I didn't realize I was signing up for a comedy show today.
Well, get ready.
Anyways, grew up in Paris. Had a good mom and dad and regular family, everything like that. Went to high school. I liked it. All my teachers liked me and stuff like that, but I was horrible. I didn't pay attention to schoolwork at all.
Oh.
Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
I'll join that team.
I was really into music. I played a lot of music. That's how I met Steve. Just fiddled around for 4 years essentially. And when I got out, I knew I wanted to be in some kind of service. So I really liked the fire department. My dad's been a firefighter for a lot of years. So growing up, that was really cool. And my brother actually ended up moving off to be a police officer as well. So it's kind of in the family.
Very cool.
Anyways, I didn't have the grades to
so you should have been a meteorologist, right? 50% of the time I'm right.
So I ended up, I worked in a music store with my friend and taught guitar lessons for a bit. And my aunt, she was a professor at McMaster and in health sciences and ran a program called Global Health, if I'm not mistaken. And she would send students abroad to do placements at hospitals or things like that. And cool. I didn't really have anything going on, and I think she kind of clued into the fact that I needed to do something. So she hooked me up with an NGO out of Ghana, which is in West Africa. They specialize in microfinancing loans and things like that for women's groups. So
what's an NGO?
Non-governmental organization. So
okay.
Yeah, there's quite a few all over the world. Anyways, that group specialized in microfinancing, so setting up small businesses for women. And I lived there for, I can't remember, it was either 5 or 6 months.
Oh, wow.
At high school. And came back. It was a good experience. Definitely changed my perspective on things for sure. And
in a good way?
Yeah, really good way. 100%. Yeah, it was neat seeing, because you grow up in a small town and then your first time moving out was to West Africa, so it's different, right?
West Africa.
Yeah,
a little different environment.
Yeah, and then from there I got into the environmental industry and kind of specialized in hazardous materials response and things like that, and I've been doing that ever since, along with some other stuff. But that's kind of where the start is for sure. So,
wow, that's big.
Yeah, it's cool. It was definitely cool.
That's you were there on a totally different aspect, but that's on my bucket list, Africa.
It's beautiful. If I could retire somewhere, that would be where I'd retire.
Really?
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. The people there are amazing. I mean, there's some rough spots, obviously, but...
absolutely. There is everywhere,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. So what's neat is, again, high school and wanting to follow Dad's footsteps and everything else, and now in another path altogether.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, that's cool. You're getting to travel. You're at a young age yet. I'm assuming, right? You're in your early 20s?
No. You're the first person that said that. So I'm 30. Yeah. I usually get pegged a lot older. Yeah.
Oh, you're an old
I don't think
guy.
I've heard anybody say I'm in early 20s since I was 19.
So, but no, you're in your early 20s when you decided to head overseas.
Yeah.
And what did that lead to now? Because I mean, we just sat for the last hour and chatted. So you've got some amazing stories to tell us here or share with us. Because I know we probably have listeners out here right now going, I really, truly would like to go over and serve somewhere else in the world, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to find the right channels to help me go serve and help somewhere else globally.
Yeah, it definitely puts perspective on things when you work somewhere else, right? We're very lucky living in Canada and being able to
Truly
do something
blessed.
like this. So that's good. And anyone that wants to get into that sort of thing, I think it's really important to do research. And, I don't know if I can give you guys my contact info. If your listeners are looking at something like that, I'd be more than happy to help. But there's lots of organizations. You don't have to be a doctor or, anything special to go volunteer somewhere for sure. So.
Awesome. You know what, Mike, that's a good point, because Ange and I always talked about that. Like when I was still working the front lines, we wanted to do some humanitarian work, some volunteer work, and we talked about working in like some of the jungle hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
I could go in as a medical aid, and my wife Angie said, like, she'd do absolutely anything, like whatever's needed to help out in the village or whatever. So I think there's a lot of people, and that's a great point, Mike. I think there's a lot of people that maybe either have the spare time or are just looking for a new direction in life and would love to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Especially at a young age, I mean, that you're coming right out of high school or college or something. You want to see, this is the time to do it. And to give
100%.
back. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing where so much of us fail to do that, is to really give back in that part of our life. I mean, I think it's amazing. Good for you. That's so awesome.
Yeah,
it's cool.
absolutely. So, like Mike had alluded to, we just got to know you. We just got introduced. We watched just the most powerful video.
Yeah.
For me, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got to, we're going to touch on this. So, you let us know as much about you from that aspect, because you wear many different hats.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could have a show just on, on the volunteer firework you do and the work you do at the place they're at. I won't mention unless you want to mention, but
they're not sponsoring us.
They're not sponsoring us. But I think what we want to do today is just we want to introduce you, because there's obviously 2 or 3 shows here.
Oh, go.
Like, and it's just, and like we're talking, what I would really appreciate, and it would be my honor to have you come up to Frontline for an evening, have you come in and just talk to the group over there, because we have a lot of military personnel, a lot of firefighters, paramedics, police officers that would just love to talk to you.
Yeah, that'd
and
be
see that
fantastic.
Video. So, but I mean, today we're going to concentrate on what this show is all about, is introducing the people and find out how you got from day one to where you are here. And then we'll ask the question at the end of the podcast as to what's next.
Yeah.
But so Africa.
Yep. Yeah. So I've worked quite a bit in Africa, mainly in the West. I've been back a couple times. So in Sierra Leone and Liberia, I worked, I can't remember if it was 2014 or 2015 when the Ebola virus disease was going on. I did some consulting for the governments down there, just with my background in hazmat, obviously, protective equipment, that sort of thing. It's up my alley. A few years after that, I got called back and worked with the Royal Sierra Leone Armed Forces, their Presidential Guard unit. They had a big mudslide, killed a lot of people. The gravity of this is very hard to explain unless you see it in person. I'll show you guys a picture after. Essentially it's, you put a whole town in a blender for kilometers and kilometers, right? So we, and I should say actually, some of the stuff that I have done is paid. When I was in West Africa the first time with when Ebola was going on, that's a paid venture. But meeting the connections, the one thing I'm very good at is I like people. I like meeting people, and I can meet anyone anywhere. That's kind of what I like to do. So the contacts that I made in the military there, when the mudslide happened, a gentleman at work, Mike, I didn't even see it. He showed it to me on the news, and immediately I thought, my guys over there working, what can we do? So we did it was cool. It's the first time we did one of those GoFundMe things. And I said, guys, listen, I'm not a charity or anything, but I have this idea and we can train these guys on how to extricate bodies essentially from the mudslide. So we attained 3 thermal imaging cameras and essentially just taught these soldiers how to navigate that landscape and search for bodies and mark them so they can be extricated. Yeah. So I did that, which was cool. Worked in South America for a little bit. I did a really cool project down there. A gentleman just showed up at our office today. He's very well known in the environmental space in Toronto. And they were having issues in the jungle where there was pipelines that were leaking. And they just had villagers and kids and stuff like that with buckets, shoveling out crude oil from these lines. So we put together a really cool course down there for that group. And then one thing led to another, where I met some police officers down there, and I ended up going back and worked in Peru and Bolivia, teaching how to deal with some clandestine lab disposal and things like that. So, really, really cool. If we're kind of getting into the Europe side of things with what's going on in Ukraine right now, the group that I worked with, Operation Orphan, they actually responded to that same mudslide in Sierra Leone. And I ended up connecting with the director on LinkedIn. We got in touch and decided I wanted to be a part of their team. I had some stuff happen when I was on the work side in Africa where I got into a car accident and injured my back. And it kind of woke me up to, what's cool. Like we were talking about it before when you first get into the services, young guy, you're full energy and there's bravado and stuff involved. And you think it's a cool thing. And then looking back on it, is it really worth it for money? What's going on? So I wanted to still be involved in traveling and working, but I wanted to do it in a different capacity. So that's how I met Op Orphan. And then kind of the rest
I was wondering where they had Operation Orphanage. That really kind of touches my soul. I mean, with kids and that, it's so that came in through this whole Africa trip. Okay, cool. And then that, like you said, you touched on it, and we're going to go there. You touched on it over in Europe and Ukraine. So you've recently been in Ukraine.
Yeah, so it was crazy. We worked in Moldova and kind of this no man's land area between Moldova and Ukraine. The way it happened was funny. I was on a work trip with my team and my VP and directors, and I have a lady that works for me that's from Ukraine. She's from Odessa, and she was on vacation there. I think probably 15 or 20 days before the actual invasion happened. Wow. It happened in 2014, but before this party started. And the initial talk was she had her grandparents were in Odessa, and the initial kind of thing I just was like, why don't I go over there? I can get your grandparents from Odessa and bring them home. Like that's up my alley, right? I'm very comfortable in working in those types of environments. So the invasion happened. We're talking. I said, I might be able to help out with this, and I have people that are working in the area, and we could easily go in and facilitate that. And on the same trip, I got a text from Brad, the director of Op Orphan, essentially just saying, listen, we're on standby, and we have a group that you submit your readiness level. If you can leave within 10 hours to 48 hours to whatever. Yes. Ping, ping, ping. We didn't know where it was going, and then we ended up the invasion. I took some notes. I think it was on February 24th when they moved in, and we were in Moldova in the camps on March 6th. So it was very, very fresh when it happened. Yeah, definitely.
Holy mackerel! Yeah, we're only 2 months ago.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So how does and again, I'm just this guy. Like I said, Bryan and I talk about all the time. I'm just a guy who's sitting out there like every citizen going, what's really going on? You're hearing all the stuff here on the news and stuff. Now, Operation Orphanage, what did that have to do with Ukraine? Yeah,
so they're based out of Nottingham in the UK, okay. All right? And what they do, they have a bunch of different really cool projects, and I encourage you guys to look them up. They're a very cool grassroots organization that's run by Brad. So they have a bunch of different programs in the UK, where they supply children with bedding, all different services, like really good, feel good stuff. The team that we were working with is called the Crisis Response Team. And what they do is essentially respond to any type of disaster, be it man-made or natural. Okay, so it could be a conflict or a natural disaster, and find, identify, make safe, and keep safe at-risk kids. So that doesn't necessarily mean, a parent has died, and, it's not the typical, what you would think of as an orphan, kind of like what I was explaining to you earlier. It goes beyond that. So, in Moldova and Ukraine, you would identify fighting age males can't leave the country, first of all, right?
Yeah,
so it's a lot of women and children. So if you have a woman that is traveling with, 4 kids, say she has no money, and one of the children has a health problem where they require medicine that's very expensive, Operation Orphan looks past it. So they put the story together, okay? So you've left Ukraine, you're in this country you don't know anything about, you have no money, and you need money for childcare. What's the next step on making money, right? You could be into prostitution, some kind of illicit activity, whatever. And they have a knack to identify that and just kind of give these people a hug and set them up into a safe space, right to the point where, they can work with local businesses and try to maybe pay the person's wage for a couple months to get them back on their feet. When people are coming out of these conflict zones, they don't have, you don't own anything, right? Like they're, in the video, you see these people with Sobeys bags, so imagine packing up your house in the middle of the night in a Sobeys bag with 3 kids and you're in another country. So when you're empowering people, one thing that I've seen working anywhere, empowering women to start working in business or just getting them back up on their feet, they're the glue to the family unit, right? So being able to be fast moving and get these people back into jobs and safe accommodation and that sort of thing is helpful in spades, right? So.
Wow. So, sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead.
I just, I look at this and vision. So you're there witnessing these people packing up and leaving.
Yeah.
What's it like? We can't imagine what it'd be like to pack up and leave. No. But this is something that most of them aren't even used to themselves because they're younger people. The older people, older folks that are my age, it's a little different. But what's the atmosphere like? I don't even know what the right word is that I want to ask, but I think
it's tough to explain. So when you're we'll put it this way. So I've worked in quite a few conflict zones and the typical whatever.
And that's where I kind of want to lead from one conflict to this one.
Yeah.
It's
So
totally different.
So number one, the scale of this is unbeknownst to anybody.
Yeah.
This isn't war is always bad. The conflict is always bad, but this is next level, World War II tanks, aircraft, the scale of it is incomprehensible. Where I find is weird. The thing that I notice most is that, being around conflict where there's fighting, shooting, whatever, that's one thing. But when you're seeing people that are coming into a camp, you know what I mean? They've lost everything. There's the lights are on and nobody's home, right? So they've lost it's almost like they lost their soul in a sense. Yeah. And, in Europe right now, they're weaponizing rape. There's civilians getting killed. To even to explain shelling, right? And Eastern Europeans, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners and they'll agree with this. The old Eastern European ladies are the most stubborn people you'll ever meet in your entire life.
That's where I was kind of going with the age thing because we see the images and I see Grandma and she's like this miserable, they it's just unbelievable.
And they have such pride in their home. Yeah. The issue is, and what I tell people is that everybody is tough and you can be stubborn and tough. The lines, the front lines in this conflict, what you see, it's very demarcated, right? It's not like an insurgency or something. There's fronts. People are marked as soldiers. So for instance, in Kiev at the start of the war, Gucci and Prada and all these stores are still open, right? So it's a weird. Vast majority of Ukraine right now, if you're driving in it, is very safe. So what happens is people get this sense of security. You can hear shelling and bombing and stuff going on in the distance, and it's like, okay, it's not too bad. We'll stick it out. We have lots of food, this, that, whatever. But when it comes into your town, it's a whole different story, right? There's no room to be tough anymore. It's a whole different thing. So what I saw working in the camp, specifically one in Palanka, which is on the Moldovan-Ukrainian border, it's probably the busiest one coming into Moldova. The best way I can explain it, so there's a lot of communication. So cell service still works. You can get, in Ukraine even, you can talk, right?
Yeah.
But the weird thing I found was that these buses would come in or people would just show up on foot. A lot of that happened where people are walking, right? And I'm talking, they would do that because the queues to get into Moldova could be 7 or 8 kilometers long, right? So it's a few days where you're sitting in the cars. So what I found is when different towns would get hit, a day after, these people would start to show up. And the one that really resonates with me is a town called Mykolaiv. And the people that were coming out of that town, so you heard about it that day, and then the buses started showing up. And like I said, it's a blank, like there's nothing there. And one of the gentlemen that we worked with, Dave, he was kind of our ops manager on the ground. Very, very switched on guy. The whole team was really good. I mean, these guys are awesome. One thing I'll remember is that this lady with some children came through, and they're very tough, right? Yeah. They're showing up. It's super tough. Like, get down to business, get some food, some diapers, whatever. And as soon as somebody touches you, like, so Dave went up to this lady and said, just, don't worry, you're safe. Mm-hmm. And as soon as he said that, it was just this
opening up.
Yeah.
Just wells.
And that would happen as soon as you kind of connected with somebody, right? So it's a weird, but you can't explain it. Like, even in the fire service, anything I've done doesn't relate to dealing with people there. It was a totally surreal, just seeing where somebody has nothing left. You know what I mean? In the video, I referenced a friend, Stu. I've worked with him in a couple of different countries. He's a news reporter. And we were texting back and forth. He was working in Ukraine, and just saying a story that, he's in a children's hospital. There's kids that are banged up, and he's talking to a dad that, his granddaughter and daughter both essentially blew up in a mortar attack. And, the dad's telling Stu, I'm supposed to be a dad. I'm supposed to protect them. What am I supposed to do? So when you're talking to people like that, there's nothing you can't bring anything to the table, right? It's just, what do you say?
And we saw that text.
Yeah.
Oh, I just banging the table.
Yeah.
We saw that text that had going back and forth. In the background, you could hear the sirens going.
Yeah.
And it's...
Well, and to that point, Logan, it's the whole dissociative thing, like when you were talking about that woman. Like, she had to be, she had to be tough.
Yeah.
She's got to, for the most part, disassociate her fears, her thoughts, because she's looking after her children and herself. And it's that whole thing of, like, as soon as you said that to me, where your buddy there put his hand on her, all of a sudden she could let go of that.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. I don't know if you can relate to this as a firefighter, but it certainly was that way for me, is that we've got to disassociate our feelings and our thoughts as different parts of the 911 chain, because you've got a job to do.
Yeah.
When there's, a tragic event going on, that's not time to show a lot of like personal emotions and be upset, because you're there to do a job. Yeah. Police officers, paramedics, firefighters, nurses, everybody's got a job to do. So you disassociate those feelings, you do your job, then afterwards. Yeah. And just as you said, as soon as he put his hand on her, she could go, okay, this is one effed up situation. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, working there, and we worked like some of the guys on our team and girls. Like, we had a pediatric nurse, and they're nail guns, right? Like, they're very experienced, like very, very experienced, well traveled, worked in a lot of areas. And I think during that deployment, there wasn't one person that didn't have to, take a step out and just get a breather, because it's like I said, you'll deal with, you have a woman that comes in that her husband's been killed. She has 3 kids, no money. Maybe there's sexual assault involved. Like, it's a surreal experience. The one interesting thing, which is funny, is that with crisis response team, I got involved because I like the search and rescue aspect. And I'm comfortable working those areas. A lot of the team members are very, very good with children, right? So Kezia, she's a pediatric nurse. I'm horrible with kids, right? Like, I'm not like the guy that's wanting to play catch and whatever. And it was really interesting. Tim and Dave, Tim and Dave are both in the military, and just from work, we're putting on our vests and getting everything ready. And instead of putting, tourniquets and this and that in our vests, I'm like loading it with slinkies and bubbles and stuff. And seeing, one of the goals with this is obviously identifying at-risk women and kids, but the children that are coming through out of conflict zone, it's the same gray look. Yeah. But as soon as you give one of these kids a slinky, it's like they snap out of it and go back to being a kid. Yeah. Right. And it's really, really cool. And for me at the start, it was a little uncomfortable because I don't know, you know what I mean? I'm not, in Paris handing out slinkies, but I kind of took Kezia's lead. She was a genius at it. And, it just brings them back to some sort of normalcy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where they can just relax and kind of let their hair down a bit.
Yeah, no, it's, I was listening to you chat there, Bryan and Logan, about just that, the profession you're from, the critical care paramedic on the helicopter, and you're there watching, texting with your buddy who's in the hospital.
Yeah.
And we watched this video, which broke my heart.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough, and Bryan, I'm going to go here for a second, but we're watching this thing, and next thing I know, you're gone.
Oh, I had to get out.
And that's I'm going to find it tough to even say this, but I know all of a sudden I went, oh, damn, that hit home because that was your life for a long time. You had to take your emotion out of it. You had to be that person to support, do your job and then walk away. And as soon as I saw that, and I heard you leave the room, and I thought, and you get these doctors, these pediatricians, that's their job, but they've got to walk out. I mean, they've got to try to be a human feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of being a human feeling after that. I mean,
yeah. Logan, you mentioned something there. You were part of that team that identified women that were at risk. So how did you do that?
So I'm by no means a specialist in that sort of thing, but Operation Orphan employs quite a few of those. So we had a really great guy. His name was Andy on the deployment, and he was a police officer from England that specializes in child exploitation.
Oh, wow.
So there's a few different things, and he would kind of run out these on-the-fly training courses, and we have to take a lot of training through Operation Orphan just to get that. One of the interesting things in the video where they were referencing taking window tint off of cars. And for the listeners, what would happen is when the refugees were coming in from Ukraine to Moldova has a law where you can't have window tint. And in Ukraine, it's very common. So women and children, and I remember seeing, babies on just the seat. There's no car seat or anything, right? There's no food, fuel shortages, they've been traveling for days. And you get to safety, and then the border guard says you can't, come in, right? So we ended up we kind of became masters on taking tint off of cars. And then we sat back and thought, this is a really good way for us to get into a vehicle, right? So we're not police or anything. You can't get into the country, so we'll take the window tint off your cars. But then you know what? People are putting two and two together, and we had just a little code word to put over the radio to get Andy to come over and check up on vehicles and see what's going on. But it put us in the situation, right? Mm-hmm. So you look for things, if a male is leaving Ukraine, number one, that sets off alarm bells. There's rules where I think if they have 3 or more kids, they can leave and at a certain age. But if you had a male like me leaving Ukraine with, say, 3 women that are 16, it doesn't make any sense, right? So that's an immediate. Or if women and children aren't allowed to talk to you, right, and it's very guarded, that would be another sign, right? So you know what I mean, or they don't have cell phones or no way of communication. So the window tint thing was really cool, just to get into the vehicle and make communication and see what's going on, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's just an out of the box thing you come up with.
Well, it sounds like there's many people from a lot of different vocations in life, like nurses.
Yeah.
Paramedics, firefighters, police officers. What I wrote down here, it's just, it's really heartwarming for me to hear that there's such an amazing outpouring of support.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was also interesting in Europe. Any of the NGOs, so the organizations, there was a lot of the big ones, right? The UN agencies, UNICEF, that sort of thing. But any boots on the ground or people that are going into the fight and coming out or whatever were these really small organizations. And what's fascinating about Moldova, it's the poorest country in Europe. They have nothing, right?
Wow,
and
didn't know that.
These border sites, the tents, the food, everything was from these small Moldovan church groups. All different churches got together to help, and they have nothing, and they're giving everything for these people. So I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, again, being this, just a guy, and which many of our listeners are, they're hearing these stories, and but to hear, like you said, in Kiev, the Pradas and the Gucci's and the cell phones and this, and you're thinking, and to have, we so gratitude. I mean, to sit back and look at what we've got. I mean, we sit here in this environment that's a great studio, and this shit going on.
Yeah.
The one thing,
friggin' believable.
The one thing for me that I think's been really important in just working, and it's so with your organization, right? You were saying you have firefighters, paramedics, police, military, all that sort of deal. I have a lot of really cool buddies within the services and that sort of deal. And the one thing that I find with this is it really dumbs down what you care about back in Canada. Like, it becomes very frustrating, and you get it like firefighters. Everyone gets this where, you get home and, someone's complaining that their, car doesn't start or whatever. And you're just going like, I don't care. and with this, it's really put, with the traveling and I find guys that are in the military can relate. It's just what really, really matters. And I was listening to a cool speaker the other day, and he was talking about how lucky we are in Canada and the States to be able to complain about what we complain about. Social issues, this, that, like all this stuff it is very important. But in the grand scheme of things, if you look at Afghanistan, that's going to be the number one humanitarian disaster of my generation, right? Like Ukraine, you have all these Yemen, all these things, and it's really easy to become miserable and where you don't want to, talk to you. It's just like, I don't care about anything you guys care about. Yeah. And you should just be caring about this, but you have to keep it even keel, and people haven't seen it, so they can't relate, right?
Unbelievable. Brian, I know you got a ton of notes down there, and so do I, but you know what? I would really like to just, I hear this is what you've just gone through recently, but as we say, our podcast is called What's Next, and I really want to have you come back on, and I want to know what's next for Logan Barrett. I mean, so do I, because we still didn't touch on a lot of stuff, but we've run out of time here, and I've got a million questions too. So you know what? Let's do that. Let's have Logan back on.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
you come back and join us again.
Absolutely,
that would be amazing.
I always laugh too, and you said it when you come in, like with the previous podcasts and radio shows that I've had. People always like, "Oh, I'm so nervous. I don't know what we're going to talk about." And I go, "Holy Hannah!"
Yeah, 30 minutes has gone by. That holy smokes! We could again. This is like everything else. We could go on for an hour, but I really truly want to refocus again and start on what's next.
Yeah, and we'll talk with Stephen here and maybe get some of that, maybe all of that video up. It's beyond powerful.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, sharing that with us today. That I can't believe it.
The biggest thing, the reason why that video is how it is because you have to take the TikTok and Instagram and Facebook out of war. And what I found very frustrating is everything that people are, eating on this are these, and I mentioned this, are these kind of cool videos that look like they're out of a video game, a helicopter getting shot down or something, and it's not the reality of it.
No, not exactly.
And I'll give you, just before we leave, I'll give you one story that was really, really, powerful to me. So in the border crossing in Palenka, this family, this area, you're in and out within a couple hours. They get you on a bus and you're heading somewhere to Europe. Like, they don't want you staying. And this husband and wife showed up and just ghosts. Nothing, like, lights are on, nobody's home, like we talked about, okay? And they came out of Mykolaiv. So they sat on a bench for probably 6 hours. And they're on their phones, glued to their phones. And the wife is just in and out of tears, and they couldn't speak English. We gave them some of those tinfoil blankets to keep warm and got them some food. And something just wasn't making sense. So I got an interpreter to come over and just, what's going on? Are they waiting for somebody? What's happening? And he was in his 30s, okay? So Mykolaiv's getting hit very bad. And he transported his wife to the border. She's going into Moldova, and he had to go back to Mykolaiv. So if you can put yourself in that situation where you're, as a husband, you're saying bye to your wife. Now, this guy, like, again, when I reference this conflict, this is a meat grinder. This is right out of a World War II movie, right? You go, and there's a very high probability you're going to die. Yeah. So as he's a husband saying bye to his wife, and he was a computer programmer by trade. Wow. So he doesn't have any bit, you know what I mean? Yeah. When you're seeing that, or we had lots of, husbands saying bye to their babies, you know what I mean? And giving the baby to the wife, and they get into a queue, and who knows where they're going. So it's stuff like that. It's not on TikTok. It's very, very serious. It's not a, no. Yeah. It's a,
no. And that's what I really appreciate out of the video. Now, it got to a point where it was just overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the footage that is there, because that's real.
That's what's happening. That's real. Exactly.
That's exactly
we see we see this stuff on the news all the time, and it's so pointed in the direction that, but this was just, man, oh man, it hit me hard. Yeah. It was so cool. But I appreciate you being here, Logan.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And I love the fact when you came in and said, what are we going to talk about? As Brian said, wow, we're definitely going to do this again. So thanks for being here. Brian, thanks for hanging out again.
Thank you.
And as we say, it's the stories that connect us. And Man, you're a part of the family now, my friend.
Yes.
Emotionally,
I got to hit the gym more. That's what I don't know.
Do you do legs?
No.
Brian doesn't. Anyway. Sorry, I had to throw that one in.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. And stay tuned for what's next.